understand though why, because he was recently talking about his Elon Musk interview.
Yeah.
And how he was like
Drinking whiskey during
drinking,
that.
but like to get him to loosen up.
Yeah.
So that makes sense now, because like I didn't think about it completely at all, because I don't try to unnecessarily create anxiety.
Yeah.
But here now it's like, okay, I'm stiffening up a bit. I can feel it.
It's
like,
super
in the-
easy to
in the
get like
environment.
just nervous when you're on the spot.
Yeah.
And you know other people are watching or listening.
Yeah.
That's
So
the
up
scary
until
part.
this point, it was like, okay, I'm fine.
Yeah, we were trash talking people like
Yeah.
up until this point. Those who shall not be named.
Are you
Yannick and
recording
Phil.
already?
Yeah. I thought we'd just start, when we're ready.
Oh, cool.
Or when we're not ready. Surprise you.
I still think we should get whiskey.
Next time. Oh, if you want a beer,
No,
I
no,
can
I'm
get you a
good.
beer.
But I have to coach tonight at your gym.
I'm fine with you coaching after a beer or
Probably a
two.
bit looser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just let people get away with some stuff that you normally don't.
I normally do that anyway. It's like,
Hey guys, welcome to the RAW Barbell Club podcast. I'm your host, coach, and all-around good guy, Andy. Today I'm here with my really, really good friend, Vu What to Do. Also
AKA
known the
Snatch Sensei. Yo.
So, Vu, we've been friends for a very long time, and what's really cool is that we got into weightlifting at very similar times, and we got into weightlifting through very similar means and with very similar influence, right?
Yes.
Talk to me about that. Who was our like influence?
Oh, but it's like embarrassing. It's like that dark little secret that you don't want anyone to know, because it's like generally like frowned upon.
Okay, but like we'll give people context. We got into weightlifting at a time when, like we were at the peak of CrossFit's height, like in popularity. Like CrossFit was going off.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was booming.
And because of that, and because of the way we trained and the way we were into CrossFit, the loud personalities were what drew us to weightlifting in the first place.
Yeah. Well, there wasn't many in general that were putting stuff out there.
True. There wasn't a proliferation of like Instagram and all of that. All we had was things like YouTube videos. So we watched old Cal Strength videos.
Yeah.
And even things like hook grip and
Hook
All
grip
Things
wasn't around then yet.
Yeah, there were. I think they might have been around, but very small.
Yeah.
And not a big deal. So who did we get into? We got into the John North.
John North, yeah, Attitude Nation. But that was through Cal Strength, I think, initially, with their training videos, which was really good overall training. But and then he started doing his own thing as well.
Yeah. And how did
And
we
his
meet?
antics. I think actually hook grip, just to go back for a second, hook grip started off as just photos around like maybe shortly after that period.
Yeah.
So many people don't actually know that they started off just as like photoing events. Because I remember they started doing, they got popular for doing like sequence photos, which then obviously is a natural progression into like their video work now.
Yeah.
So
Because you could buy the sequence.
you could
that's
buy
how
the sequence
yeah.
as a poster. So they would do that and set that up, and it'd be really cool. They had heaps of lifters.
And sorry guys, if you can hear like that banging in the background, I can't really do anything about that. That's just, we've got a lot of wind going on, and so the garage door on the warehouse, our gym is banging. So if you hear that, I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, sorry, what were you saying?
So going back to our story, we met at a John North seminar, which was one of the few weightlifting seminars going around. So it just so happened he was coming to Australia, and I was into weightlifting, so and I had followed his stuff, so I decided to go check him out, and then I met you. I think because the way it went was a lot of people within that seminar were from the gym that was hosting it, and we were kind of like one of the few that were from outside, so we kind of like was like, hey, do you want to partner up, kind of thing.
Well, I think what happened was, so you were pretty quiet. Like you're not a super loud guy in
no.
real life.
No.
Contrary to what people might see on Instagram, you actually don't talk that much.
No. Yeah.
And I think we just had said hello, but hadn't really done much. And then it came to lunchtime, and I was like, "Can I have a ride with you to the lunch venue?"
Yeah.
And that's when we started talking, and then we started.
Yeah, you
lifting
forced
together.
the issue. You were like, because I don't normally talk at those things. I normally just trying to like sit back and
sit quietly in the corner.
sit quietly and just do me. But since you asked, I was like, not gonna say no.
Yeah, I'm not gonna make it weird.
Yeah, I was like, because we would have to come back after lunch as well. Be like, oh, I said no to this guy for to lunch. So,
And then that was the day we both snatched 100 for the first time.
yeah, and it hurt.
Have you ever looked back at the videos of us doing that and how bad our technique was?
Oh, for sure, like heaps of times. But that's a part of it, I think. Learning, but also just being, just seeing how far you've come, but also recognizing that, like, despite like the flawed technique, we still hit 100, which is, I don't know, still pretty big thing, I guess, for most people to aim for in weightlifting.
Well, the first time you do that is like a pretty big deal to most people. I don't know why this is acting weird. That's better.
Yeah.
The first time you snatch triple digits. Actually, I think there's a few things that are very important to a lifter. I think the first time you
I think it's body weight first,
hit anything in body weight.
Yeah. Then it's triple digits, clean and jerk.
Yeah.
Or clean.
Or jerk.
Clean and jerk. And then it's like the snatch.
Yeah. And then obviously you've got back squat, deadlift, presses, and
Yeah, but I think like the back squat, it's more like double body weight.
And then the other one that people do is also they count the plates. So like the first time you snatch blues, the first time you snatch reds.
Yeah.
Especially for the girls.
Yeah.
First time you snatch greens and yellows. And
Yeah. Yep.
so it's like 35,
that was the
45,
thing for
55,
me,
65, 75.
That was a thing for me. The first time I clean and jerked 2 red plates in competition though, because like you
So
can
that's
do
125, not
Yeah.
120.
Yeah, because you can do it in the gym, but like in comp you count the collars, so it's a bit more than you would do it in training
Yeah.
to be able to get the 2 red plates.
Yeah, because who was I talking about? I was talking to Malik the other day, and he was like, "Oh, it'll be really cool to see Lasha do 225,
Yeah.
because that'll be 4 red plates,
Yeah.
which is ridiculous
Yep,
to see
to
someone
have on the
snatch
bar,
that,
yeah.
right?" So yeah, those are all awesome ways to, I guess, gauge your progress, like easy ways,
Yeah.
things to strive for, really cool goals.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're talking about today in this podcast. We're going to talk about your goals and how to work to your goals through the art of programming, which is pretty exciting. I think there's a lot of science that goes into programming,
Yeah.
but that's not what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
I think we need to talk about the beauty and simplicity in how you can get to where you want to go.
Yeah. Well, I like the way you phrase the art of programming in itself, because when you think of art, it's subjective, right?
Yeah.
So like, there's no like, I guess, science behind like who judges art, right? Like you got, Picasso, you got like other artists that are completely different, but like they're still like known, I guess, or famous. So I guess in terms of that, I try and look at it a little bit more differently than just like pen to paper and like the science, I guess, like you said, which I think we're going to get into a bit more in terms of what you want to get into for programming.
I think with it as well, we're not discrediting the importance of the research and science that goes into it, but like that's not important if you're trying to. First off, let's say there's a couple of things that the purpose of programming is to achieve whatever set outcomes that you've set, right?
Yeah.
In the context of weightlifting,
Yeah.
it could be an increase in strength, right?
Yeah.
Could be an increase, and strength can be we'll broaden strength to include things like just your absolute 1RM, but it could also be like building something like volume strength. So like being able to do a squat for 5 reps.
It could be squat strength.
Could be squat strength,
squat
yeah.
focus versus a snatch, clean and jerk focus.
Yes, and then the other side of things is it could be a technique focus. You might be purposely programming in a way to fix a certain technique flaw.
Yeah.
Or you might even be like, so that could be like exercise selection to do a certain thing.
Yeah.
Or on the other side, you might stay away from the classical lifts and strengthen specific muscles or movement patterns that will lend themselves to a change in technique.
Yeah.
Right, so it's getting a bit complicated now, but what I want to talk to you about is, first we'll talk about the strength one and ways of programming around strength, and we'll talk about, you know, long-term, short-term goals and how to set out, and then we'll talk about the change of technique or improving the snatch, clean and jerk.
Cool.
All right?
Yeah.
That seems like an easy way to break it down, right?
Yeah.
So the first one is then strength, right? There are different forms of strengths. There's different ways of expressing your strength.
Yeah.
In the context of weightlifting, it's mostly seen in the squat, right?
Yeah. I would say squat, yeah, for the most part, and then secondary, you might look at like pulls and press strength.
Okay.
In terms of like strength accessories. But yeah, the squat usually is what in weightlifting considered the strength focus when we talk about strength programming.
And again, not to discount things like pulling strength or pressing strength, because they have their place. And if that is your weakness, that is what you want to work on. But we're going to work within the context of squatting for now. And whatever principles we talk about with this can be actually applied to things like deadlifts and presses.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Like it's a very similar principles.
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
The only caveat that I would say is that when you're talking about like the presses versus squats versus deadlifts, there are certain things that you need to be mindful of in terms of like, firstly, how many times you can train them in a given week, in a given session, how you can recover from certain movements. Yeah. And then lastly, I guess, like how much volume you can actually manageably, physically do without breaking yourself. Yeah. So presses would probably have like the highest amount of volume. It's quite easy to recover from them for most people. Some, you know, everyone has differences. Then you'd have like squats, which can also be trained pretty often, but less so than presses. And then things like deadlifts, which, you know, like maybe once or twice a week. Yeah. Unless you're doing pulls, in the sense that you might be able to train them more often, but heavy deadlifts are quite hard to recover from.
Yeah, I think with pulls, if you're doing like snatch and clean pulls, you can kind of like work that in, because your snatch pulls aren't too heavy relative to like a deadlift. But yeah, deadlift's usually heavy once a week if you're working on that. So I don't know. I would actually like question the squats and the press. Yeah. Only because I think you can recover from presses, but how much you need to work them to get stronger is probably not as much. Because like once you get to a point where you're fairly strong in a squat, you have to do more to actually move that needle. But with a press, overall strength-wise, you're not really going to get like that higher number on like your press strength, if that makes sense, relative to your squat. So you don't need to work it as much, I guess, to get the benefit.
True. And do you count things like the bench press in the presses as well, or would you put that separate?
I do. Like typically, you're not going to see it in a lot of traditional weightlifting programs.
And why is that?
I don't know, to be honest.
So I've heard things about like the flexibility and stuff, and I know programs where, like, we're a very like strength focused gym. So in programs that we have done a lot of benching, like front rack gets a bit hard. Yeah. But I know for the girls, they very much benefit from it.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I like to see like closed grip bench press, which is about shoulder width, not like tricep kind of grip.
Yeah.
Bench press as an accessory or strength piece for especially like girls in weightlifting, because their upper body is generally weaker in terms of push movements, so that really kind of helps the overhead work, I believe. It really does, because especially if they don't come from like a background of like strength training.
Yeah.
Whereas guys, you tend to have like a little bit of a history of like, you know, going to the gym, doing some bench press,
Or just doing bench press.
just doing bench press, doing push-ups, you know, just like that general foundation already. So they kind of don't need it as much, and they can kind of like just get the results from overhead pressing.
Yeah.
But girls, I see a big benefit in building a closed grip bench press kind of program for them. And I think girls generally like a little bit more supple, like overhead mobility wise, so it doesn't affect them as much to do bench press. And as well as if you're just working on strength, I guess, you're not trying to like do too many high reps sometimes, so you're not like restricting their snatch and clean and jerk ability.
Yeah.
Whereas with guys who tend to be a bit more restricted overhead, it might affect them doing some sort of bench work.
Yeah, so a perfect example is someone like me who does seem to like get bound up a bit if I do a lot of bench.
Yeah.
So it actually doesn't affect my my overhead as much as it affects my front rack.
Yeah.
Because it's just like I'm just unable to get that excellent rotation most times.
Yeah.
And then it gets worse and worse.
Yeah, and like for you, your jerk isn't as much of an issue in terms of the strength, and you can kind of like just work your overhead strength, so you don't see as much benefit from adding bench.
Yeah.
As someone else might. So.
But mentally, I do, because everyone asks me how much you bench, and I don't want to be embarrassed anymore by the answer I give.
I've just like lived my life like to not be able to answer that question well, so I have no like ego about it anymore. So I just have no chest and no bench.
And that's a funny thing as well that you see like in weightlifters, like I mean, you see some of the Chinese lifters that obviously do bench and do dips and
weighted dips,
you know, like do a whole bunch of that stuff, and they have a very aesthetic body, like a body that looks like it's built for lifting.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you see weightlifters that are just weightlifters.
Yeah.
They got like decent shoulders on them, you know, decent triceps, these legs that could probably move a house.
Yeah.
And then everything else is just like weird pillow body.
Yeah. Yeah, that's me. That's why I only wear tank tops. I don't take my shirt off.
Anyway, we went off topic a little bit. Let's start off with this squat. We have a lifter.
Yeah.
Who, let's say his or her name is Sam. All right. Sam's a good like name for a lifter, right?
Cool. Yeah.
And we're trying to improve Sam's leg strength. All right. At the moment, our biggest change. Sam is a beginner.
Okay.
And he has just started, you know, getting into weightlifting. He's come from a background of doing some lifting and stuff. So we're working on his technique, but our big focus at the moment is getting his leg strength up so that he can snatch and clean and jerk more within the sport of weightlifting.
Yeah.
All right. We have 12 weeks to work on this. What does our first 4 weeks look like in terms of like our programming for the squats?
Yeah. Generally, I would start with...
As an example, there are different ways of doing this. I want to see what you would do.
Like for someone newer, newish, I guess, but has a bit of training already under them. First of all, they're probably going to see 3 days of squatting for the first time.
Yeah.
For the most part, most people, even doing like regular CrossFit training, are only getting one proper strength squat session in a week.
Yeah.
So going from that into 2 to 3 squat sessions, and then usually you would start with a little bit of a higher rep kind of block the first 4 week cycle. So anywhere between 5 to 8 reps, I would say. If you're really nasty, you would do 10 maybe for a week or two, but that's pretty hard mentally, especially if you're newer.
Yeah.
It's more of a bit more experience. You might do a few weeks of 10s just to get a little bit of a hypertrophy and like suck in the legs and a bit of a mental push, I would say. But like 5 to 8 reps, I would say. You're working a variation of, in terms of weightlifting, you're just working a variation of the back and front squat over the 2-3 days.
And do you put more emphasis on the front squat in certain situations or the back squat in certain situations?
From my personal experience, especially if they're like...
And it could depend on the lifter as well.
Yeah, I think it does depend, but like early on, I like if someone is getting into weightlifting for snatch and clean jerk, I actually like to focus on the front squat more. So 2 days to 1 back squat, for example, just to help really work their position for front squats, receiving cleans. It might be improving their front rack, and just like that ability to hold the bar in terms of the torso, because we can, as they get stronger overall, that's when we can really push like the back squat later on. I think as a absolute strength.
And developing those good habits within the front squat have a larger payoff at the beginning, when they're going to get a lot of strength benefit out of the front squat.
Yeah, like this, like initially when they're not that strong, like you're still going to get stronger from doing 2 front squat sessions and 1 back squat.
Yeah.
Even though you're not squatting as much in a front squat.
And whereas later on you're going to get more out of a back squat.
Yeah.
Because generally it's absolutely more weight that you can lift than a front squat.
Yeah, but at that point you should be pretty comfortable like doing like in the positions of like front squatting and cleaning, what you should be. So that would be the mentality behind that.
And between the 3 days of squatting, do the rep ranges and sets change, or are they very similar?
Yeah, so you could go a couple of different ways with it, I guess. But yeah, you would definitely vary it up, because you would have like, I guess, higher rep days where you might be really trying to push it, and then the other days, because they're a bit more taxed, you might go a bit lower reps and maybe just be like, not like give them a percentage or like a RPE. So it's just kind of like a volume day. So it depends, like, because you can still have like a low rep day and go full intensity as well. So usually, like in terms of intensity, I would put that at the start of the week when the legs are fresh, assuming that you have like a day off on the weekend, versus the end of the week after a long training session. So that's when I would do, that's when if I wanted to do like, go for a really heavy low rep scheme, do that, or really push like a 5 rep kind of scheme. Either way, the intensity should be highest at the start, and quite proven in terms of strength. You start off Monday with let's go straight 5x5 back squat, right? Let's not even worry about percentage there, it's just like hard working sets.
And where do you start a 5x5 back squat? Because that's a question I always get as well.
That comes down to if you have coaching supervision, I think.
Yeah.
But then, like developing, if you don't, if you aren't able to supervise the squats with a person, say they're doing it when you're not there, or like via online programming.
Or maybe they don't have access to a coach at all and they have to work it out themselves, which is not
tricky.
Ideal.
Yeah.
But like, where would you recommend they start a 5x5?
So usually first couple weeks, you would use it as a feeling out process, I would say. So the first 2 working sets, you might be doing a hard set of 5, but it's like maybe like might be considered a warm-up set still.
Yeah.
Like. So you kind of have to gauge it, like in terms of like RPE, you might like want to feel that it's getting heavy on the last 2 reps,
Okay.
where the first 3 reps are kind of okay. As you get more experience, you want that 5x5, like the working sets, to be all quite tough. So that becomes a bit of a art form, I guess, between yourself as an athlete and your coach monitoring it. Because even as an athlete, if you know where you should start realistically on a 5x5, intensity-wise, you're usually going to count that first set a little bit later.
Yeah.
Because it's work.
Yeah.
Squat work is pretty sucky in the scheme of things. So that's why having a coach there, I guess, to say, yeah, that doesn't count as your first set, by the way, can be a big difference in someone gaining strength. Because over the course of X weeks and whatnot, then you're doing that extra little bit of work that you might not have without that coach kind of like monitoring it. And a lot of times with myself, even when I record my lifts and it feels like a 9, but I look back at it and it's like a 7 in terms of ease of movement, then I'm like, okay, I should put more weight on the bar. So that's what happens with me, I guess. And if that happens to me, then it happens to a lot of people that aren't able to see themselves if they're not recording themselves, I guess.
Yeah.
So 5x5.
And for those that don't have a coach, like recording yourself is a great way of giving yourself feedback on everything, right?
Yeah, because like you said, you can easily feel like it's a certain difficulty or feels really bad maybe. But then sometimes you watch back and you'll be surprised at how well it moved, the way it moved or your technique was, and you're like, oh, okay, that wasn't actually that bad. I can push myself a little bit more. Yeah. And see how it goes. So it's easy to fall on the safe side, I guess, if you're training by yourself without a coach, which is fine because you don't want to hurt yourself as well, usually in that situation.
And you're going to get stronger either way because the key to getting stronger is accumulation of volume.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world if you didn't go like the heaviest 5x5 in the world.
Yeah, so like if you could have squatted 100 kilos for 5 and it would have been like tough, you might have missed it, you might have had to drop the bar or whatever, and the difference between that and squatting 90 kilos for 5 isn't that great.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I always say to people that want to push that a little bit extra, which is a good mentality to have in the gym, I don't mind that, but like also in the scheme of like the whole week of training or the whole session of training, moving on to the next thing, it's just like you got next week to try and beat this or do that extra set. So it's fine kind of thing in terms of squats. Nathan's like that. He always wants to
push the squats.
Push in general.
Yeah.
Like if he misses a few times and he still wants to get back to him, like you get it next week, like move on kind of thing. You've done enough there. So you got 5x5, which is I think a nice classic beginnerish, but not even a beginnerish way, like it's good in general. You could do that.
And what else might sit on that Monday workout then? Would it, because it's a squat focus day, a lot of the other things would probably be lighter and just accessory.
A lot of things might be lighter. I might just, well, in the scheme of like Sam, he's learning, so like you could still do snatch and clean and jerk because he's like less probably that heavy.
Yeah.
So the focus is the squat, and as he gets the reps in of practice at the weights that he can do, that'll come up with his lifting.
Yeah.
And generally generally like I like to do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday split of squats. So you got the day off in between, or if you can't do Friday, you do Saturday. So Wednesday you might go a little bit lighter, a little bit lower on the reps.
Yeah. And would that usually be the back squat day then?
You could go overweight because normally you do 5x5 with back squats.
Yeah.
As a big strength piece. But if you want to do front squats first in the week and then do back squats in the middle, you could do back squats at the end of the week actually.
Yeah, and do the second day of front squats.
Yeah, the second day of front squats.
The main thing is that you have some sort of rest in between the sessions so that you're somewhat recovered and you're not, like the goal of weightlifting and practicing weightlifting constantly is to almost be recovered enough to do the exercise again at your full potential.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
of course, there is going to be an accumulated fatigue,
Yeah.
but you can't just be like back squat 5x5
No.
day 1, then day 2 back squat,
Yeah.
5x3, and think that the benefit is going to be exactly the same.
Yeah. So I mean, on the other days, if we're doing the 5x5 as the Monday primary strength focus, and where you're really pushing the working sets, the other days I might manage that a bit more and put percentages in.
Yeah.
Or I could work it so that I could regulate the intensity or the load by putting like a variation in, like a pause.
Yes.
A pause, or been playing with like the banded squats.
Yeah.
Where it's working like different things, but you're not able to go to a true like heavy weight.
Yeah.
Like say you put a 1, 2 or 3 RM, with the first rep having a 3 to 5 second pause. You're pushing as much as you can for that, but with the pause you're not going to be able to go as heavy as you might without the pause.
And with our case study of Sam, he also may have the double benefit of the pauses, because they can help him work on some flexibility issues.
Yeah.
Because that's what pauses do.
Yeah, and just like having that confidence to get out of the bottom.
Yeah, because you can't bounce.
You can't bounce.
And the other variation you might also be able to add in is just like some sort of tempo work, right?
Tempo, yeah.
Like going down slow, coming up slow, because that's going to be an extra technique work for the squat itself.
Yeah.
Which is beneficial to a lot of people. Like, I benefit from tempo work.
Yeah.
Because I'm someone who likes to tip forward a whole bunch.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I think all these variations with their own benefits also help to regulate like being able to manage like the 3 days of squatting.
And the main reason that you're doing that is to make it just a little bit lighter.
Just a little bit,
if
yeah.
you weren't going to program percentages.
Yeah.
Or you can do both.
That's right. So I think because initially if you're newer, percentages may be a little too light.
Yeah.
Because you're kind of like getting stronger.
Your rate of growth is so quick.
Yeah, so having the RMs there with the variation regulates you to like about an 80%, 90% range, but still allowing you to progress week to week. Lately, just speaking on the benefits of the pauses, I've programmed front squat pauses.
Yep.
For an athlete who was very clearly like straying away from going all the way down in his back squats on his heavy sets of 5. So his first 2 sets were full depth and deep, and showed his potential of range of motion. And then the second, so the 4th and 5th reps would be just like parallel, where he'd be scared to go lower with like that weight. But in weightlifting, you generally want to always hit that bottom, just to get the full strength benefits that you need for like a big clean.
And that becomes less important the larger the disparity between your clean and squats become.
Yes, yeah.
So that's why you can see someone like Ilya cut his depth on his squats but not have an issue on his
because he's got such a big gap already.
Yeah, there's
on his
such
squat.
a large repository of strength there.
Yeah.
But especially with anyone, I guess, pretty much anyone in Australia doesn't have that large a disparity.
Yeah.
And it's always going to be beneficial to squat a little bit lower.
Yeah, and obviously for pause, you're pretty much always going to go as low as you can, because it doesn't work to hold a pause
at halfway. It actually is much harder.
What?
It's actually much harder to
It's
hold
much harder,
yeah,
yeah, exactly, yeah. So you would always go down.
And then what does our final day of squats look like?
Our final day of squats, I wouldn't say would be too different to like the second day.
Yep.
At the moment, like I would just keep the reps a bit lower and just work in like a variation. Yeah, pretty much just keep it simple, pretty much, because in terms of like beginners and squatting, it's really just the 3 days.
Yeah, it's just actually squatting.
Yeah, it's just squatting 3 days really.
Yeah.
And you could work it whichever way you want really. And I would see it work for the most part.
Awesome. Maybe one thing that I would add to that is that if you're going to play around with rep ranges and stuff, keep them close-ish together.
Yeah.
So within 3 to 4 reps of each other. So like a Monday squat workout is 5x5. You wouldn't do your Wednesday squat workout as like absolute 1 RM.
Yeah.
But you know, like Vu said, you might do like a 3 RM with a 1 second pause in your first rep, or a 4 RM, or even a 5 RM with a 1 second pause in your first rep. And then the final day, let's say you do go down to a 3, that's fine. But you wouldn't be doing like a 10 and a 5 together. Just because the adaptations are going to be very different. So like with a newbie, you'd stick around the same rep ranges for that week, at least.
Yeah.
So
just getting used to squatting more frequently at fairly high percentages, I guess.
Yeah. And I'd be keeping the tonnages quite similar too.
Yeah.
Which is quite easy to calculate. So like a 5x5 at 100 would probably look like 2,500 kilos of tonnage. And then your next day, if you calculate that, you'd be like, oh, you know, I'll keep it around there or a little bit less if I'm doing the 3 reps. And then on the Friday or Saturday when you squat again, maybe that's a really light squat day and we do like only 3 reps, but we do like 10 sets of 3 reps or 8 sets of 3 reps, and we keep that around like 50%, and that ends up being like, you know, like 40 kilos or something for this person, and you're just doing like a bit of technique work or speed work or something like that.
Yeah, based off the same principle of this case study, I guess, with Sam, if Sam was like towards the end of his 12-week cycle, like I might not change it too much. I might change the first day to being a bit less reps, so you can go heavier, but the other 2 days you might just like keep pretty similar, but you add volume by doing drop sets.
Yes.
So you might have that.
And how would you do that? Like, what does a drop set look like for someone who's like completely brand new?
So the day is you do 3 RM, first rep being like a 3 second pause or 5 second pause. So after that you might minus anywhere between 10 to 20% of what you get in the 3 RM and do 3x3 without a pause.
Cool. So if you squat 100 kilos for 3 reps, then your drop sets would be between 90 and 80 kilos. For again multiple sets of 3 reps of some sort, right?
Yeah. So that's as you're progressing in strength, experience, and needing to do more without doing more days, and just adding more volume in that way, off the same kind of structure, and that, like, I've seen drop sets go into like 4 to 5 sets sometimes, which is really like, that's when you're really pushing it in terms of adding volume and strength. Well,
then, like, if you think about it, like when you would instead of doing the 5x5, you could go up to a 5 RM, and in going up to a 5 RM, you've probably gone somewhere around 70%, 75%, 80% for 5. So you've already got 3 reps there, potentially a 4th if you can get up to 85%. That's already 4 sets, sorry, not reps. And then if you add in like 2 drop sets, that's your 5 sets of working volume as well, right? And that's another way of doing 5x5 that we didn't talk about from before. Maybe that would be more for an intermediate athlete or an advanced athlete though.
Oh, actually that might work for like a beginner in terms of like getting them to get that intensity. Like you were saying, in terms of how do you know when to count the 5 working sets of the 5x5. So instead of them counting, they're just going to heavy. And then you're getting them to just minus 10% and doing an extra couple sets of 5, which is going to be heavy working sets for them.
And then you were saying, so the next couple of weeks might look actually very similar. The main thing is that as a coach, you're looking for the weights to kind of go up because we're trying to increase the squat. Or the weights that he can handle 4 reps goes up. So if he starts off doing 5x5 at 100, by the end of the program, whether it's 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, or 16 weeks, or however long you program for, we want that either that 5x5 to go up, so he's able to handle 5x5 for like 105, 110, 115, who knows what his rate of progress is going to be, or he's going to be able to improve his absolute 1RM. So if you started with a 1RM of 120, we want that to get up to like 125, 130, whatever.
Yeah, I think for beginners, it's less prudent to always test 1RMs.
Yep.
You could have a baseline, but you don't really need to be working on it in the program. If you're just working on like improving your 5x5 progress, by the end of it, you're probably going to be able to test, and he's going to have a big jump in his 1RM.
And a lot of the times with the beginner, that 5RM actually is their old 1RM. So if you're able by the end of a 12-week program,
then you don't even need to retest that.
Yeah,
you
so
just
like
know.
If your 1RM was 120 kilos and by the end you're squatting 120 for 5, I think you've gotten stronger.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, because retesting 1RMs, it's kind of like cool, but like you're not really doing work to progress if you're always doing that.
Yeah,
I guess.
And then what does like an intermediate athlete's I guess program or progression look like, or even like week of squatting look like?
I actually wouldn't say it would be too different. It would just be more case of volume and intensity in the rest of the program in terms of like lifting.
Keep talking, I'm just going to check something. Yeah,
in terms of like lifting, like because if you're an intermediate athlete, assuming you're a bit more experienced, you're a bit stronger, you are then lifting, so obviously you're doing like with weightlifting, you're doing squat, snatch, and squat, clean, and jerk variations.
Yeah.
So that's all like squatting volume too. And relative to a beginner athlete, that's going to be at heavier loads. So then it's looking at that type of amount of work as well. So sets and reps there. Also like lower intensity leg volume as well that you can add, which may not be the case in a beginner cycle, such as lunges, single leg work, glute accessories like a barbell hip thrust, what are the squats that you do?
The incline squats,
the incline
quads,
squats for reps at the end of a session. That'll all add as well.
Because like one thing to take into account as well with the intermediate, even advanced athlete, is that you start to see things like imbalances.
Yeah.
And that's what these accessories are built to fix, right?
Yeah, especially as you're able to push a bit more weight in the squat, you start feeling the one side in your back or whatever, or the hip playing up. So the imbalance work plays a part in getting overall strength as well.
Yeah.
Because if you get stuck with a niggle, that usually doesn't help you get stronger.
Of course. Because the person that's the strongest, and I've said this before on the podcast, isn't the person who lifts the most weight, it's a person who lifts for the longest.
Yeah, who can like continue to train.
Yeah. If you continue to train for 10 years, you're going to be stronger than the guy that trains for like 1 year, usually.
Yeah.
More or less. Hopefully.
That's why I take time off lifting. So I can lift for longest.
Yeah. And then
like, I'm the oldest.
You said it doesn't change very much in terms of the actual squat programming style, except for the increase in intensity and volume. What about the advanced lifter who is at a stage where he's not, like moving, he's not setting PRs every day anymore, or setting PRs every month or every cycle?
So I think with the advanced lifter, you then have to just start really like getting a bit more individual. You probably have to stray away from like, if you really want them to progress, you might have to stray away from them doing like a group or a club program and individualize a bit more, whether it be adding days, sessions, volume, and really looking at how that's if you want to make that the priority.
Yeah.
Especially with the squat for an advanced athlete, can be quite taxing, right?
Because they're lifting so much weight.
Yeah, because they're lifting so much weight. You might have to reduce the volume of like the lifting.
Yeah.
For the benefit of overall strength gain, and that's when you start looking at more than the 3 sessions.
Or less than the 3 sessions.
Or less, yeah.
A bit more creativity in like how you program the movements.
Yeah, so just like really having to look a little bit more individually.
Yeah. And that's when
working things out maybe even.
And that's also when the science sort of comes
in a
into
bit
it more. Because at this stage in their career, we sort of had this in our group chat the other day when Yannick was like, oh, you know, like we were talking about the percentages.
Yep.
And I was like, I think percentages don't matter as much for a beginner as they do for an advanced athlete, because an advanced athlete seems to be more stable in the minimum weights that they can hit on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, yeah.
So because of that, it's actually more predictable. You can say, hey, this day is a 70% day. Whereas with a beginner, a 70% day could just mean like a 40% day.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Right? But it could also, you know, if they've been going up and down, or, you know, with the intermediate, especially like if they're going up and down, a 70% day might actually be an 85% day.
Yeah.
So yeah, when your strength is more stable, that's when we can get more sciencey about it. You know, like we're going to do 75% for 6 sets of 3. The next week we're going to do 80%, and on and progress that way.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that you can do is you can get creative with the way you program. So maybe they do 5x5, but they have a morning session where they do 3 of those sets, and then the afternoon session where they do the next 2.
Yeah.
Or at the start of the session they do like a certain amount of reps, or maybe they build to a heavy 5, and then they do their drop sets after their regular snatch, clean and jerk.
Yeah.
Like there's a whole bunch of things that we can talk about, and we could be here for hours doing that.
Yeah.
But I just want people to know that it's not just cut and dry. As you get more into sport, there's always a way of improving some aspect of your lifting.
100%. Yeah.
One last thing about the snatch, about the squats. Just because I love programming so much, I like talking about this, especially with you. Is that one thing to take into account when someone is not improving is that you can do something to improve their mindset as well.
Yes.
And that's where variability comes into it too. So if you have someone improve their pause squat as opposed to their regular squat, that's still setting PRs, and then that's going to give them a renewed sense of self, renewed sense of like their training.
Yeah.
They're going to love training again because they're making PRs.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's when, like, in terms of like us talking about like having 3 days of squatting, it's not going to vary. In terms of what you put in there, like having 3 days of squatting, generally it's going to help most athletes get with the volume and the accumulation of work, going to get stronger. So that's where doing little things like having the variety for your athletes to hit different PRs is what gives them confidence.
Sure.
Otherwise you could just keep it the same really, and they would still probably get stronger, but having the variety to play with in different cycles changes things up and gives them little wins.
And that's important, right? In the sport of so many bad days, giving them more good days than bad days is always going to keep them in the sport for longer.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's move on to snatch and clean and jerk. We mentioned at the start that there are a couple of ways to improve. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
Well, it really depends. It depends on, I think we both look at certain focuses each cycle for maybe aspects of the movements that you want to target. And a lot of that comes down to what you're seeing as a majority of your group of lifters that you might want to work on, which oftentimes in a club you're already kind of like through a cycle, so it's not really good to change midway, but you kind of like take note of that for the next cycle, whether it be like a portion of the snatch that is weak that needs to be worked on.
Can you just give us an example of that?
So it might be they're not like finishing, they're not explosive enough on their second pull or finishing well, but they seem solid off the floor like now. So working blocks or like stuff from above the knee to target that for a cycle. But generally you still want to always have a day where you're hitting snatch and or clean and jerks off the floor, I would say. And then on the other days you have variations for different reasons. So it might be like a focus in general that you want them to improve on, or it might just be like for the sake of variety, I guess. Oftentimes also you might want to like have the variety just to take loading off for certain sessions.
Yeah.
So say that session is like we said, the heavy squat session 5x5. Then you might just go easy on the snatch and clean and jerk and make it powers.
Yeah.
Which you're not going to go as heavy with. It's not going to tax you as much. You're going to be able to get through. Whereas if it's like 5x5, then it's like heavy triples for squat snatch, then clean and jerk doubles. Like you're probably crying towards the end of it.
And are you getting much benefit out of it as well? Because like it's
No,
just
but
drilling you into the ground.
Yeah, you're done after that session.
Because one thing with weightlifting is that you need to be able to train the next day, because it's such a demanding sport in terms of the amount of things that you have to do on a daily basis. I mean, I'm not saying that you can't, so the newbie can train like 3 days a week, but let's say you are training every day, like you have to be mindful of like being able to recover enough to train again and again, right?
So lifting wise, I always like to put in like a light day, which is usually power based.
Yeah.
Power snatch, power clean and jerk. So especially if it's like they're doing Monday to Friday, back to back, or every day, you want to kind of like break that up and have an easier day, whether it's power or like tech focused, where it's just like don't exceed 70% and just work on a certain element that you want them to focus on in technique. But then also, you want to have like days where you are practicing going fairly heavy, because that's, especially if you're going to compete, that's where you need to have experience.
Yeah.
And then that's also going to push your numbers to get better.
In weightlifting programs, we very rarely see like big rep ranges of like the snatch and clean and jerk. Like it might be kind of seen in CrossFit and stuff, but you're almost never going to see anything over 5 for a snatch or clean and jerk.
Yeah.
And very rarely do we see a 5 in the first place. It's usually
threes at most. Yeah.
Triples,
Threes is
doubles,
a hard day.
Triples, doubles, singles.
Yeah.
Right? And because of that, we're not going to have as much variation in those rep ranges as you would in the squats, where you go up to 10s, 5s, 8s, 3s, 6s, 4s, whatever.
No, it's more about the variation in the movement than the reps.
And each variation should have a purpose.
That's right. Yeah.
So you mentioned before variations that are less loaded and versus heavier loaded.
Yeah.
So like a power snatch, like a high hang snatch, a snatch off the blocks are sometimes lighter for people.
Yeah. If you're a bit more intermediate, you're going to be able to push like something off the blocks to pretty close to like your best numbers.
Yeah.
But where that is less loading is you're not pulling off the floor, so it's less loading off your back.
Yeah.
But you can get pretty heavy off the blocks if it's prescribed that way.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing in terms of if you want them to get better at their max, their competition lifts in that portion, which is
without having taxing them enough.
Then they're able to work that.
And then lifts that would be on the heavier end, I guess, would be things like pauses. It's like a pause at the knee snatch. Usually taxes the body a lot more than like a regular snatch.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially if it's programmed heavy.
Yeah.
Snatches of deficits. And then you can tax things like clean and jerks in different ways. Like you do clean plus front squat plus jerk.
Yeah.
To tax.
Yeah. So adding like
jerk.
Yeah, making it a complex.
Yeah. Making it harder. And then you use complexes in a very cool way to actually fix technical errors, right?
Yeah. So that's where I think like snatching and clean and jerking exercise prescriptions in programming can be a bit of problem solving based off you as a coach. It's like, just like trying different things. Like, what if I put like these two movements into a complex for the reason of addressing a certain thing, so that I'm not just like yelling cues to try and be more explosive or something, or pull higher.
Yeah.
it's kind of like serving the function within the exercise.
So give me an example of that, because you had, for example, in the lead up to nationals last year, you were working on my high pulling ability with the snatch, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What were we doing?
So we're doing, it was meant to be off the blocks, but you guys were lazy, so you did it just off the hang.
Yeah.
2 high pulls into a power snatch, and then repeating that without dropping the bar.
Yeah.
That the repeat of the complex is more just to, with the idea to challenge like you with the volume initially.
Yeah.
Working on the technique, and then taking off that second set, and just being able to just do the 1 set towards like competition time allowed you to peak the movement, I guess, and the exercise with more weight.
Yeah.
So I mean, the purpose of that was just to really get the bar higher.
Yeah.
For you and push, because you guys move around the squat snatch well, so you can turn it over and get up. You can turn it over and get under. So if you get any more height on the bar, then you're already going to succeed at a heavier squat snatch.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So that was just like I made that up. Like
Yeah.
I didn't like. A lot of times we draw inspiration of previous programs, what we see online and all that, and for the most part, like 90-80% of what most weightlifting coaches do has already been done.
Yes. You're
so
very rarely reinventing the wheel.
yeah. So I mean, I'm not saying that hasn't been done before, but like I didn't like take that off anything previously. I kind of like just looked at something.
Yeah.
A lifter, it wasn't you, it was like someone else that I coached, then I worked that out for them to try.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just a case of like thinking about it and trying, and that's where the art comes in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I want you guys at home to take into account, is that there is a time and place for following like a structured program, but sometimes you can put in that structure yourself. You know, can you talk about the progression that you used as well for that particular complex?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, did you say the rep ranges?
Yeah, so you do the 2 snatch high pulls.
Oh yeah.
Into the power snatch, and then you repeat it.
Yeah, for the first.
That's the whole set. And then
and you did that for the first 2.
You do that for the first 2 weeks because you want that second week to better progress.
Yeah.
Try and progress on that complex. And then weeks 3 and 4, you take off. You half it.
Cool. I got distracted by what's going on downstairs.
Yeah. So that was just like that was my reasoning behind it. So yeah. That's where it's like, okay, you can make something up, but you also have to have a bit of reason behind it too. You can't just make it up to make it up. Which that's when it gets like a bit
squirrely,
wishy-washy with like, I saw like CrossFit on Instagram do like a 20 rep barbell cycle complex.
Yeah.
With all these different things. It's really cool if they can do that, but for you, what purpose is it going to serve across the progression? What technique point is it going to address, kind of thing. So as a weightlifter, or like someone trying to get better at weightlifting,
and that's what you always want to ask, like, how will this make me better?
Yeah.
And I like it when my athletes come up to me and ask me like, oh, what is the specific purpose of this exercise that we're doing? Why are we pausing at this point?
Yeah.
Why am I pausing at this point? Or why are we doing this many reps? And then you can say, and your coach should always have some reason.
Yeah.
If they don't have a reason, that's when you're like, okay.
Yeah. I guess the last piece in terms of snatch and clean and jerk is you very well might just have like a traditional like bunch of like snatch and clean and jerk progression.
Yeah.
But the added art to it is how you coach your lifter to do it. So, for example, I've got a couple lifters that are really working on their jerks as a weakness. And I don't have anything different programmed. Like I have a couple clean and jerk days, and I have a jerk only piece programmed, like jerk off the blocks for 3 reps. So that's all like pre-standard, where I can give that to like 10 different people, and you'll progress generally. But for those 2 people, I've given them a technique or like a mental focus when they do those movements. So it's like for them, they need to focus on pressing under versus pressing up, because their issue is like relying on pressing up and then getting to a point where they press out. versus being able to lock it out.
As opposed to all of our lifters that seem to just drive themselves down into the
Yeah,
ground.
so for those two guys, the technique is like focusing on like doing the movements and,
Yeah.
and pressing under. So that's where it's like, I haven't changed the program at all.
You've just changed the intention.
Yeah, I've given them like coaching.
Yes.
So programming should be an extension of your coaching, if you're coach.
Yes.
Not just programming is the answer
Yes.
to getting them better.
But and if you're an athlete, the programming should also be about intention too,
Yes.
right? Like you're not just blindly following percentages for no reason. You need to have a rhyme and reason. There needs to be a beauty to it. I always say.
Yeah.
You know, and that's part of the art too. Is that like
There's so many factors.
a good program does, at least it looks beautiful to me. You know, if I see it written, I'm like, oh, that's how that flows. I see, that's what he's doing. And then, oh wow. You know, there's a crescendo of, you know, intensity, and then the volume drops off, and then come comp time, you know, oh, why are the accessories still there? Okay, this is why the accessories are still there, because he's been building them up this whole time. The body can handle that.
Yeah.
And now drop and competition, and bam.
Yeah, I think
PBs.
that's the beauty of like the athlete journey, and within programming, and starting to learn and experience like the rhyme and reason for everything in the cycles, experiencing different programs and how they work to benefit you.
Yeah.
And also seeing like things pay off in a program that when you started you couldn't see any reason for doing any of it.
Yeah.
And then by the end of it, you're like, oh yeah, that really worked. It came around. You got everything out of it, and you got results. So I think that's a big part of like what we've done as athletes ourselves to experience, which helps with coaching and programming. I think having gone through it in different ways ourselves, what's worked, what hasn't. For the most part, like you said, pretty much all of it works if you're training like long term and consistently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as you're not going backwards, you're going forwards.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, you're always going to have periods maybe where you're not like absolutely in the, like hitting your best numbers of your life.
Yeah.
But you're still moving forward by continuing for training and doing a program. Because that program might just be designed to like, I don't know, like
Push your squat up.
Yeah, push your squat up. Yeah, instead of your clean and jerk. Yeah, just or work your accessories and your imbalances.
Yeah.
So that you're not like injuring yourself. So you can go through your next phase, which is gonna be really pushing it. Yeah.
This was a very content-heavy episode, so I think we should do a part 2.
Yeah.
In the future. Also because it seems like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people are here and coming here.
Yeah.
So where can people find you?
I am on mainly Instagram at Snatch_Sensei.
Did you almost forget that?
Yeah, because I had to think about, I have the underscore in there. So that's pretty much where you can find me. Yeah.
And guys, you can find RAW Barbell Club at RAW Barbell Club on all of our social medias. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Snapchat, Twitter, and all of the in-between. Make sure to follow us so that you can see the cool things that we do, and we'll be sure to put up a lot more content for you guys to love and share. Please make sure you do share this episode if you found it helpful. And if you have any questions, because we're definitely going to do a part 2, hopefully next week if you can spare some time. It'd be cool to answer those questions.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, please do that. Please just share it, ask questions, and reach out to both of us. And I'll see you guys next time.
Cool.
Thanks for being on, bro.